Hello everybody, Beyond Rogue here. Welcome back to another video. So as you can tell by the title of this video, this is more or less a video essay of sorts. I'm calling it a retrospective on the August 15th, 2015 update to MineZ. So it's been 3 years now since that happened, which is crazy to believe for myself and I'm sure anyone else who played the game back then, because it was such a monumental time. So before I get into this video where I reflect on this update and its good things and its bad things inherently, I just want to give you guys a little bit of context into MineZ at the time. So before August 15th, 2015, MineZ was actually in a pretty rough state. I wouldn't say it's as bad as it is today, but it surely wasn't doing great. There hadn't been a lot of new content in a long time. In fact, from my memory, there was a Weekly Arrow, I believe it was called, like a newscast sort of thing that Chapo did on the forums. And one of the more recent changes I can remember before the update was the addition of filling in the holes in the bridges near Alhassa. So, needless to say, not much new was going on at the time. And this update was huge. I still remember to this day the lobbies being jam-packed, going to Grimdale on the day of the update and literally finding 20 to 30 people just peacefully coexisting, all wanting to try out the new body offload dungeon. It was an insane time, and well, to be honest, it was just great, because that was something that so many players hadn't seen before, seeing the servers that full, especially those who came after the game's heyday in, say, 2012. So now that I've addressed the context of it, the overall question I'm sure many of you guys are asking, was this update good or bad for the overall game and for the network of Chapo as a whole? And the answer to that's fairly loaded, but I'll try to answer it in one word. Both. It had its good and its bad impacts, obviously. And, I mean, that's the word I would use to describe this update as a whole, was impact. I mean, the amount of people it brought to MineZ, along with bringing people back to the game that hadn't played in some cases years, was insane. Again, I already said there's such a high player count, and this update brought us so much new content. Dungeons like Shrine, Desert King Sanctuary, Polister, Body Offload for a time was open. Those dungeons had remained closed in such a stagnant shape for so long, and to see them finally open brought so much new content into the game right away. And it honestly paved the way for newer content to come out as a whole. For instance, we saw a lot of rebuilds, places like Mount Longton that are even recently rebuilt. A lot of that new content is still an effect of what was pushed out with the August 2015 update, because that just led to so much more being pushed out in the past several years, actually. Even some renovations to dungeons, so things like Warped Ruins being redone, as you can see in this video. I think that's what I chose for the background of the video. There's a bunch of new things that are coming out, and that's great. And it also brought some refreshing new aspects to the game. For instance, the idea of putting multiple legendaries in an elite dungeon with a chance of getting each one encouraged people to return to the dungeons over and over again. Because, say, if you do Shrine of the Dusk once and you want to get a key or a chest plate, you're going to have to probably do it more than once to get both of those items. So it brought so many more refreshing things into the game, and overall those are what I believe to be the main good effects of this update. So needless to say, there's been a lot of negativity surrounding updates in MineZ over time as well, so I did want to go into that a little bit and just discuss some of the negative things that this update did bring about, because, well, there were quite a few of them. For one, I feel like the update, and when I say I feel like, a majority of the people that were around at the time also believed that the update really killed the economy of MineZ, not just as far as trading went, but as far as value of any items went, because random legendaries were put in place, which essentially made it so that an easier dungeon like Maze of the 10th and a harder dungeon like Ghost Fleet dropped the same loot. So, for instance, you'd be able to get a binding helmet or a binding bow or a heal sword from the same dungeons. In fact, there was a time where I remembered getting the Helmet of Vision, which was a pretty useless legendary at the time, out of Ghost Fleet, and I felt incredibly insulted because that was still a pretty tough dungeon at the time. So I believe that that was probably the biggest negative effect of the whole update, because it kind of killed the purpose of doing more difficult dungeons. Even Biosford had random legendaries. So you could do Biosford, and if you're in like an unfortunate group, I remember at the time, you could get 2 helmets of vision from Biosford, which was, needless to say, quite a slap in the face for doing such a difficult dungeon. But moving on from that, because I've beaten that dead horse to the stick, PvP mechanics were changed at the time as well. For instance, Iron became incredibly tanky, to the point where someone in full Iron would essentially be invincible against someone with with lesser degrees of armor. Essentially making it so if you didn't have Iron, you didn't have a chance in PvP for a while there. So that kind of slowly broke the game as far as people who like to go to Lhasa went, as a primary attribute for why PvP players have left the game over time, along with 1.9 mechanics, but that's a story for another day. Another problem was the dungeon chest system, which I believe still has yet to be perfected in MineZ. I believe they still have a long way to go in making that correct to the point where dungeons reward the players properly, but that's, again, a story for another day. At the time of the August 15th update, splash inventories became the norm because all dungeons had dungeon outs for the most part. So dungeons like Invalia Mines, which at the time was ranked on the wiki as a 1.9 out of 10 for quite a while there, would give out instant health 3 splashes, smite 5 swords, pumpkin pies, golden apples, iron armor, and other insane loot drops that just became so out of hand. In addition, dungeons like Lost Thieves Guild and Krubera Vault did the same thing over time, making it so that these dungeons would basically be hopped for their loot, which allowed many clans at the time, and dungeoneers alike, to get splash inventories with full Dura armor, gold apples, and insane gear all around that made the game almost too easy in many ways. So that was another problem with the game that this update did not help with at all. In fact, it essentially created that problem, because that wasn't a thing before the update, which, to be fair, splash inventories are much more rare now. But, moving on from that, the last main problem I'd like to address with this update is what I like to call the duct tape solutions. So, in cartoons a lot of the time, you see when something breaks, they'll just put duct tape over it as like a temporary solution, and then over time that duct tape wears off and things start to break and become worse. So, pretty much what I mean by a duct tape solution is a temporarily positive change that over time snowballs out of control and breaks massively. So my main example of this is the use of command signs that were used around the time of the August 2015 update. Dungeons like the Old Body Offload at the time, Desert Canyon Sanctuary, countless others used command signs. Shrine of the Dusk did, I believe, for a couple of things. And as a result, eventually the command sign plugin broke. And so many of these dungeons were undoable for a great amount of time, which proved problematic, especially when it's a dungeon like Shrine of the Dusk that you need to achieve Axis Mundi, which is a temporary endgame. Needless to say, became a problem very fast. And so that actually proved to ward off dungeoneers and certain PvP players alike, because there were plenty of dungeons that were universally liked that couldn't be done anymore because rooms were broken, which was very unfortunate. So, now that I've gone over some of the main attributes of the update, I'd like to give it an overall verdict, which I've actually kind of typed up because I do want this to be as well thought out as possible, because I don't want to say anything I'm going to regret here at the end of this video. So my overall verdict on the impact of the August 15th update is that MineZ was in very rough shape before the August 2015 update, 3 years ago. In fact, one of the few changes, as I've said before, was the small change to the bridges where they just filled in some holes near the canyons. So needless to say, there was a great lack of content before this update, and this update that came out, it rejuvenated the game in a bunch of ways, bringing it back to audiences that had abandoned it for quite some time, even years before. Although the game has had plenty of decline in years since, I attribute that to a variety of other factors. For one, I believe the 1.9 update and the delay that came with that didn't help the server, for instance. But I believe the decline would have come at some point regardless of anything, regardless of what they had done with the game. Because the game, it's a fact, just got older for a legion of fans that slowly outgrew the game and its concept. Many of the players that I remember hanging out with back in 2014, 2015, they're not around anymore. And a lot of them, it's not because of any new update that turned them off. They just tell me, they outgrew the game, and that's just a fact of the matter. It's something they've done, and odds are we'll all do at some point, and that is what it is. But all in all, the August 2015 update was made with the best intentions in mind. I remember even talking to a couple of the admins behind it at the time, including Magiku, who was the main person in charge of that at the time. The update was primarily his brainchild, and I can assure you, the admins who were behind that update had the best intentions in mind. They knew what they were doing, and they were trying nothing more than to help the community and the game out. And it still has many positive impacts for the game and the network to this day. So that's about it for my recap of this update. This is just something I felt like making because I realized that this update is 3 years old now, and some of my fondest memories of MineZ come after that date, which kind of is a landmark time to me just because it opened the door to meeting so many people, some of them being you guys watching this video right now. And since that time, I've made some great friends. And in fact, at the end of this video, I'm going to dedicate this video to some of those friends who I've made over the years, primarily because of this update. And yeah, that's really all I can say about that. I'd like to offer a huge thanks to all the admins, new and old, but especially to those who put their time and effort into the August 2015 update and the ones that have come out since, because they've all brought so many new things to the game and made it, for the most part, better, to be honest with you. They've added new features. Admittedly, things break from time to time, but there's new stuff being pushed out, and I really do appreciate that, especially for a game that's really, to be honest, pushing the years. So that being said, I'd like to thank all of you guys for watching this video, sticking around this far. If you'd like to see all the dedications, it'll probably be about a minute long because there's so many of them. But those will start just about any second here now. Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed and would like to see more of this style of video, please feel free to leave a like, subscribe, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to do these sort of rambling videos. But until then, thanks again, and I will see you guys next time.